When we look at a tree or a log, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Something hard, something rigid, perhaps even something durable? How about a pillow? It must instill a feeling of fluffiness or something cozy and cuddly to most of us, right? The specific materials that are picked to create a rigid, hard product or a soft, malleable one seem to already be set in stone by the way they've always been produced. You don't see an umbrella made out of paper or a shoe made from stone, right? Why do we use certain materials for certain uses? Well, how about functionality? The idea of a paper umbrella on a stormy day doesn't paint the most functionally efficient picture now, does it? But what if there was a better way at looking at this pre-existing product? According to the Washington Post, nearly 1.1 billion umbrellas are thrown away every single year, some unable to withstand even one rainy day due to the cheapness in their build. Now we stop and think, that's a lot of waste. Perhaps we should come up with a new way to reimagine the product. Maybe this could even take us down a direction to create a more sustainable product. Why stick to plastic? I'm not here to try and convince you that a paper umbrella is the way to go, but rather, it's by asking and addressing these kinds of uneasy questions that are so far beyond what we are comfortable with, is when we can actually come up with ideas we haven't even dreamt of before. And better yet, ideas that don't harm the environment we live in as much. I asked myself a similar question in college when I had to find the solution to a problem of my choosing in the form of a thesis. The question I asked myself was this: we are governed by our preconceived notions. Things are being created the same way they have been for eons without any major change. As a designer, isn't it up to me to shake up the system and think in a way that hasn't been thought of before? Being at Parsons, a design school, the project had to evolve into a product. So I decided I wanted to create something flexible out of a material that was known to be so rigid, one wouldn't even consider the possibility of it being comfortable. The project took a turn towards apparel, since what better way to challenge flexibility than by creating an implement for the human body, which is always in motion. I took one geometric shape, the triangle. By reproducing it at different scales, I was able to create more movement in areas that demanded it, while leaving others stiff. The product evolved from a cardboard jacket, then onto a plywood one, and one even made out of thin porcelain. Several years later, when I started DeFurniture, my sustainable furniture design company, I wanted to revisit this idea in my current work. Again, I asked the uneasy question: how do I create something flexible out of a material that's known to be firm? The answer came in the form of what I like to call wooden upholstery. Here, I challenged wood's inherent ability to be hard and rigid, and in turn made it fluid and malleable. I looked into the world of tessellation for inspiration, which basically means take one shape, a triangle or a rhombus, placing it side by side to create a more complex pattern. This particular example of a triangular tessellation has half an image of a woman's face and half a dog. When turned into a pattern, it creates multiple full images of the two drawings. Having a number of small, insignificant scraps of wood left over from past projects, most that would have been discarded for their unusable shape and size, were brought on for this experiment. Each piece, with its own inherent color, grain, and personality, were used to create a prototype of a pattern using the principle of tessellation. First, we looked at compressing the pieces onto a skin to create a sort of upholstery that could be used to clad a chair, a sofa, even bar stool seats. Each of the pieces were compressed, leaving a uniform gap, which helped with movement when pressure was applied to it. Here is a video explaining that movement. So this technique was used to create a chaise, a chair, even a sofa, and many other products. Once this first iteration was tried and tested, I wanted to push the possibilities of what we could do next. Along came the DOT series, which looked at a different kind of mechanism of vertical movement rather than linear seen in the first version. Shifting from the idea of compressing the pieces onto a skin, here we looked at individual components, and in this case, round wooden cylinders, and observed how they moved up and down when pressurized. Again, I have a video showing this motion, but I will demonstrate it. Here you go. I don't know if I can get the same pieces, but we'll try. Some of you might have noticed that each of these designs follows an edgy geometry. Even in the DOT series, the round wooden cylinders don't necessarily give the viewer a feeling of comfort. Intentionally picking pointy geometry and vertical towers was a way by which I could instill a discomfort within my audience. Perhaps make them think about design through fresh eyes, without getting stagnated by how things have been coming along so far. Each of these examples of wooden upholstery are a tangible experience for anyone who's interacted with them. And believe me, I've had plenty of people come up to me and say, "You can't expect this to be comfortable, like, look at those edges." But the most rewarding feeling for me is when their apprehensions melt away into utter surprise and delight when they take a seat. And maybe even a glimmer of intrigue that might sow the seed to a particularly uneasy question in their own minds. Why are things created the way they are? After all, it's only when we leave behind what we know that we can think and create what we don't. Thank you so much for listening. And please you can have a seat, yeah, please, absolutely. You can have a seat, you can move around in it, shift from side to side. Try and do like a little shift from side to side. Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.